Today I'm going to be walking you through my current golf bag and some of the reasons that I chose when building my set, from my irons, my wedges, my woods, all the way through to the type of golf ball I use, the type of glove I use, which grips I have on my clubs, the length, the lie, the shafts, and hopefully this will give you a bit of an understanding to what you should consider when you are purchasing new equipment. Let's get stuck in. And the very first things we're going to look at are my wedges. So I have Mizuno T20 wedges, and I'm not going to talk to you about how amazing they are, and I'm definitely not Mizuno brand orientated. They make fantastic clubs, but these wedges were right for me. The reason I chose them, one, their softness in feel, straight off the face, they felt amazing, really soft in all conditions, whether that's around the greens or hitting full shots. Second reason I was really keen to try them was the independent study by My Golf Spy, which showed that their spin retention under wet conditions was the best on the market other than ping glide wedges. So in all conditions, these wedges were doing their best to grab the ball off the face and create some friction and spin. Number three was then what shapes and what soles they do and the design I can get in them. And these matched me really well. Number four was then what type of shafts they offer and what shafts I can put in them, because some manufacturers are a little bit picky on what wedge shafts you can put in them. And that is why I went for these. The loft wise, I went 50, 54, 58. The reason I went for these three lofts is it coincides with my pitching wedge loft really well, so I'm really evenly spaced in my yardages. In terms of the bounce option, so you'll see that there's a lovely number next to 58, which is number 4. So in my 58 degree, that means I've got 4 degrees of bounce. Now, if you're interested in knowing what the bounce is and how it can actually help you, there's loads of stuff online, and we've certainly got some blogs explaining how bounce helps your wedges. For me, I had 4 on my 58 because I wanted an option where when there's a really tight lie around the green, I wanted to hit it higher with a little bit more spin than what I could with my previous wedges, which had quite wide bounces and wide sole angles. So I went for a really tight option. It does give me less margin for error if my technique's not very good, so something that I have to work on in my technique, but it's something that I feel really comfortable with and gets me out of trouble, especially in those runoff areas which we see at certain golf courses where you have to hit the ball a little bit higher or you have to putt up the slope. For me, I love short game, so I tend not to putt when I'm off the green. I want to chip it up the slope, a little bit of spin and check and hit it close. So there's my 58. In my 54, I went for a slightly different option, something with a little bit more bounce. Just in 8, and I've got this lovely shape, which means that I get a little bit of toe relief and heel relief. And you'll hear tour pros talk about this. Now, in my wedging, I like to manipulate the lie angle. So I like to manipulate the club so the toe just brushes into the ground, because this wedge has lovely amounts of toe relief. Same with the heel. In the bunker, when I lay it flat, the heel is going to touch the ground. So I need there to be shaved away here so that it glides through the sand and not digs in. So heel and toe relief is really important. Now, let's come on to the shafts. I've actually got different shafts in my wedges compared to my irons. Now, the reason these are different is for a very specific reason. Most people keep them the same for continuity. However, I changed mine because my iron shafts I've since been refitted for by Rob, and you can check that video out on our channel as well. And he suggested going to something a little softer than what I currently game. However, the performance benefit of going to something softer was marginal, that it's not worth at the minute me changing, because these are still pretty new and I'm still pretty happy with them. However, these wedges are pretty much brand spanking new, so I could take that feedback on board and go a fraction softer. So I've got the KBS Dollar Taper in black in my wedges, which are slightly softer than my S300s, which I've got on my irons. Going to something a little bit softer in the wedges can also work if you're looking for a bit more control and feedback and feel, supposedly, around the greens, and feel a little bit nicer on half shots compared to if you had something really heavy, low launching, low spinning, it's going to feel not as great, supposedly. Obviously, recommend testing it. And yeah, through trial and error, I know that my shaft's been a little bit softer in my wedges. Really helps me. The last thing in my wedges I want to talk about is the grip I've got on them. So throughout my bag, I've got MCC +4s, which we'll come on to later. However, the size of these is actually smaller than the ones I've got on my irons and my woods. The reason they're a little bit smaller, so my irons and woods have mid-size grips on them, whereas my wedges have standard +3 layers of tape. So there's about 3 layers of tape in between these and my irons. When I'm around the greens, and I've tested this, when I previously put mid-size onto other wedges, I felt like I didn't have as much handle control where I wanted to play like high flop shots, because I couldn't feel like I could use my wrist and my hands as much. So I went back to a slightly smaller grip to get the best of both worlds, pretty much. Okay, let's go on to the irons then. So here I have the Callaway X Forged, which I'm currently gaming. The reason I went to these at the time, where I wanted to go to something smaller in profile, something that I could control a bit better. So I had previously quite hard heads, which were quite inconsistent in their distance. These, funnily enough, actually go the same distance as any other club I've had, but the control of that distance has massively improved, which is a big winner. I have them, before we talk shaft, in +1/2 inch, because I'm quite tall with relatively short arms. This helps me find the middle more often. And I have them in the mid-size MCC +4s. In terms of lie angle, a lot of people ask me about my lie angle because I'm supposedly tall with short arms. Should I have my clubs really upright? Now, for me, my lie angles are standard, and I deliver the club slightly toe down. And when I say slightly, it's a few degrees. So some people would fit me for 2-3 degrees upright. Now, the problem with this is that if I'd done that with my current draw shot shape, I'd be in a lot of trouble. I'd be hitting a lot of pull draws. I'd be missing target right a lot. This is why a dynamic fitting is so important, because any fitter statically, because of my height and because of my arm width, would put me in an upright head. And as soon as they put me in an upright head, they're going to find out that I'm going to hit everything to the right, and they're going to flatten it back out again if they do a great job. So dynamic fitting is so important, and that is why I have that lie angle. Let's talk about the shafts then. So these are Dynamic Gold S300s, which are quite notoriously low launch and low spinny. The Mizuno DNA fitted me for these when I had these purchased 2 years ago. Because of a change in technique, there could potentially be a small gain to have if I change these shafts again. But the gain which me and Rob found when Rob fitted me not too long ago was marginal enough to tempt me, but not quite soon. So maybe the next couple of years these bad boys will get changed. But I love the feel of these. I love the sound of them. Everything about them, the looks, the performance, it makes me quite excited to have these. Okay, next we have something slightly different in the 4 iron. So my irons, which I just shown you in the Callaway X Forged, are 5 to pitching wedge. And at the time, I didn't want a 4 iron because I was quite happy with the hybrids I was playing. However, over time, I wanted to get a 4 iron. In a 4 iron, what I was looking for was something a little bit more forgiving than what I was playing in the X Forged, just in case if I hit across the bat a little bit. And something that was definitely going to launch and spin better for me. I went for something that maintained its loft, so something traditionally lofted in the Apex Pro, and is still going to give me a little bit of help across the back compared to my X Forged, because its CG is slightly different. So its center of gravity and the profile of the club makes it slightly more forgiving across the bat. I got it in this lovely smoke black because, well, I thought it looked cool. That's the only reason. The grip I have exactly the same, like I said earlier, but the shaft is where we get a little bit different. Similar to my wedges, this is a fraction softer than the S300s in the Elevate Tour by True Temper, and similar to my KBS dollar taper in my wedges. It's slightly high launching, slightly high spinning, so it's just going to help me. If I go something too solid in a long iron, traditionally I've always really struggled with strike and getting the ball in the air, so I went a fraction softer, and it's the perfect combination. It's one of my favourite clubs in the bag. Not because it looks cool, because it works. Okay, on to the hybrids. Here we have a Callaway Rogue 3 hybrid. So one of the older clubs in my bag now. And in them we have the stock shaft at the time, which was the Synergy Stiff. Now, very similar to my 4-iron, if I go to something too stiff in a hybrid, I tend to really struggle getting the ball in the air and tend to struggle with good strike. So I went something a little bit on the softer side of a stiff. It's not the heaviest, but also it's still stiff enough where I can actually get a good strike consistently. And this club just, it works. It's super forgiving. It flies off the bat. I use it off the tee a lot. I use it out of the rough a lot. Second shots into par fives, if I've hit a bomber down there, helps. But mainly out of the rough. Sometimes even use it around the greens if I'm up against the collar. This cuts through really nicely. Same grip on, standard length. Don't want any longer in this because it will get too far. The thing I always have to manage is my 4-iron to 3 hybrid distance. So I know this thing can fly at least 20 yards further than my 4-iron, which some people would say is an issue. But I can manipulate this club well enough where I can hit the high floater and the high spinny one, so it just reins in distance a little bit if I need it to. So it's a club I can kind of do a bit of everything with, and a club that I felt comfortable with over the years. We're on to the 3-wood. This has long been considered my go-to club. Recently, I thought about changing because there's a couple of other stuff in the market at the minute that I'm really interested in. But everyone around me said, don't get rid of it. It's a go-to club. If it works and it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I hear you. So it's here to stay for a little while. It is the Rogue 3 standard model. And the shaft that we have in here is the Grapholoy Blue. So we've got white shaft, blue logo by Grapholoy, 75 stiff. In not similar to the hybrid, funny enough. In the hybrid, I liked the feel of something softer. However, in a 3-wood, I previously had soft, stiff 3-woods and really struggled with them. So I went for something really stiff in the tip to give it a go, see how we got on, tested it, loved it, numbers were great. It is my power ball off the tee. When driver's playing up, 3-wood comes out a lot. Round Barbara, there's quite a lot of holes I can hit 3-wood and I don't have to hit driver. So it's important I feel really comfortable with this club. And I do. Ding, ding, ding. So that is really important. That's a club that is here to stay. Same grip on as the rest of the bats. Now, let's talk about the big dog, shall we? So currently my driver is the Epic Flash Sub-Zero. For those of you that don't know what the Sub-Zero means, it's not a tour head. It means that the CG's further forward, which makes it harder to hit, but also means that it spins a little bit lower. This is really, really important for me. And we're going to come on to this when we talk about the golf ball I use. So it's really important. In terms of the settings I have it on, so we've got loads of cogs in the Callaway fitting system. I have it on neutral +1. So it's a 9-degree head set on neutral +1. So that means it's set to 10 degrees. Now that puts me in the perfect launch and spin window for what I require in the shot shape I like to see. Putting it on +1 actually hoods the face a little bit, so it shuts the face down just a fraction. And that for me sits a little bit more squarer, because I've always found this model sits slightly open. So that squares it up, puts me in the right launch window. Perfect. I've got the weight at the back currently in neutral. There's no need to really change it. I like having the CG aligned in the middle rather than putting it in the draw or fade setting. Let's talk shaft then, shall we? I currently have in here the Tensai CK Series Pro in a 60 stiff. Now this is really interesting because we've jumped from hybrid to 3-wood to driver, all with 3 pretty much different shafts as we jump between them. The 2 closest shafts is the hybrid and the driver. So the problems I have with the 3-wood are different to problems I have with driver, and the comfort I have with driver is different to the comfort I have with 3-wood. So let's explain that a little bit more. With the driver, if I have something too stiff in the tip, and I did have a really heavy grapholoy blue in here, I really struggle with misses to the left because I hit up on it slightly. If the club face doesn't close up, I'm in trouble. Now, where I do the opposite with 3-wood, where I actually hit down on it a few degrees, I like to hit this like stingy ball flight with 3-wood, the stiff tip works. Whereas in driver, it really does not work. So I've got something a bit softer in the tip. I went for the Pro series out of the 10 size because it's a little bit better spec'd than the AV series. The AV series is a little bit too soft for me. And went for the 60 instead of the 70 because I like the feeling of lighter. When I tested 60 v 70 v 80 across different ranges, 60 was the one I could consistently swing the fastest. So that's why it stayed in there. Once again, same grip, mid-size, and that is my driver. Okay, now we're on to the putter. So the putter I recently had checked to make sure that I was still fitted correctly for, but it has, to start with, a Super Stroke grip on it, and it is the Claw 2.0. So the 2.0 is the size, and the Claw is the model. Now what makes the Claw a little bit unique is it has a flat ridge on each side, a flat ridge at the back, and a flat ridge at the front. So it's basically a rectangle until you get to the top portion. The reason this works for me is I use a prayer grip. So I have both my fingers going down the side of the shaft and my thumbs sit on top. Now, for those of you interested in what putter grip you should use, we've had a few blogs on that on the website, so go check it out. But that one works for my grip and how I hold the putter really nicely. Now, the length of this putter is 34.5 inches. So the standard length of a putter typically sits at 34. Mine's at 34.5 because I'm quite tall. 35 gets me a bit lazy and I tend to have bad posture and tend to get very handsy very quickly. 34 tends to mean I arch over too much, my back hurts. So 34.5 works really nicely for me. You'll see that I have adjusted the putter slightly and done my own custom works on it by putting a green line over the white line here. The reason I do that is because I play a green line typically in the middle of my golf ball. So if I play the green line on here as well, I match the two greens up together, and mission is a go, we have two straight lines of the same colour. The reason I still have this putter, even though this model's quite old, so this is the White Hot Pro number 7, and the 7 is the two-fang approach you'll see a lot of players use, is because the White Hot is this lovely insert that you can see is majority white here. And for me, it feels and rolls and consistently rolls across the face better than other putters I've tried. Now, this is one that I've toyed around with a lot and thought about changing a lot, but every time I've tested a new putter, I can't quite beat this one. This is a great case of my stroke needs to be a little bit better, my pace needs to be better, needs to have more practice, I need to put some strategies in to make my putting better, more so than I need to change it and hope that something new works. Let's talk about the neck. It's got this slightly goosey neck style, and that keeps the putter really face balanced. And the last thing is I recently had the loft checked, and the loft was actually out. So I had that rechecked, and that put down to 2.5 degrees. It was actually at 5. So over time, I've had this putter so long that the loft of the putter had just moved. So not from where I've been slamming it on the ground, because I'm not that angry, but the loft of the putter had slowly crept all the way up to 5.5 degrees. So my launch was, my ball was actually launching a lot of degrees up in the air, which when you're putting, you don't want. So I had that re-altered and my pace putting got better very quickly. Now, let's talk about golf ball. I am currently playing the Srixon Z Star golf ball. Now, a lot of tour pros play the XV golf ball. However, I don't care what they play. I want to know what works best for me. When I first started trying this golf ball, and one of the biggest things I look for when trialing a golf ball is how it feels around the short game area. That for me is the most important thing. So how I putt with it, how I chip with it, how does it spin, how does it launch. I can figure out the rest. But short game for me is where the golf ball feels the most different in terms of good or bad. So the Z Star, once I started chipping with it around the greens, started putting with it, I loved the feel. It's typically a lot softer than other premium ranged golf balls, and I would compare it potentially to the Chrome Soft, but if anything, just a fraction bit firmer. But definitely not as firm as your Pro V1Xs, your TP5s, TP5Xs, and the XV version that they also do. Now, when I mentioned the driver, I mentioned I was Sub-Zero. The reason I went to a Sub-Zero driver was because my previous driver, which was a normal Rogue, spun with this ball just a fraction too high. I often lost distance when I hit it a little bit low on the face because the spin would creep right up. And that was down to the golf ball. So I kind of had two options to optimize my ball flight consistently with driver. Change my golf ball or change driver. I wasn't willing to change the golf ball because of how well it does around the short game area. So I tested a Sub-Zero head, and all of a sudden on the golf course, my flight completely changed. So just the difference between two heads and not willing to change my golf ball made a big difference to my golf game. I tell a lot of people all the time, find a ball, and once you love it, keep playing it, don't change it. If you want to play lake balls out of the river and you want to play balls that you find, fair enough. But the consistency between golf balls is so different. Every model is going to play exactly different, which means you're going to hit it at different yardage, different spin, different launch. How you can consistently putt and chip with different golf balls astounds me. It's just not going to happen. So I found a golf ball I love. I've kept it. I keep playing it, and I'll keep playing it. The one golf ball I have been tempted to change to is the TP5. I do really like the feel of that off the tee, but putting would take a lot of getting used to, and at the minute I'm not willing to sacrifice that change. Now, some of you may see that on my golf ball I have some very funky lines here, and the reason I do this in the 3-line format, very similar to the triple track, is before triple track actually came out, I'd read some research studies based in other industries such as shooting, so archery style shooting and pistol shooting in the Olympics, but also airport runways. And they found that using 3 lines helped your accuracy with your eyes when you were lining a target up. So I started putting 3 lines on my golf ball and use this cap liner now, where I put the 3 lines on, Sharpie in, job done. And then obviously triple track came out and done that for me, but I don't play that golf ball, so that doesn't help. So that is the lines I put on mine, standard Sharpies. Now you'll also see that I've got a little smiley face on my golf ball, and somebody recently told me Tommy Fleetwood also does this, which I had no idea. But the reason I put the smiley face on is no matter how bad I'm playing or how well I'm playing, I look at the smiley face and it makes me smile. So it's all about perspective, and that little smiley face when I pick it out of the hole or when I pick it out of the trees with my 3rd provisional shot just keeps me a little bit grounded and reminds me that you're out on the golf course. It's probably a nice day. Enjoy yourself with your mates. So now let's move on to some other areas of my golf bag, which some of you may be interested in and may help you. And the first one we've got is my distance device, and I use a laser, and I use the Bushnell V4. Locks onto the flag lovely, gives me a little vibration when I've got the flag. Knowing your distances on the golf course is so important. Sonny done a blog on it not too long ago, so hopefully you would have checked that out. But if you don't know the distance you hit your golf ball and how far you've got to the hole, you are sacrificing a lot of shots based on you guessing how far away you are and therefore what club you should pick. A lot of people use GPS. I love GPS. GPS is great, don't get me wrong, but I want to know what it is to the flag. I don't want to know what it is to the front, middle or back. Plus, using this really helps me when there's dog legs or when there's a hazard. I can actually pin in, use my Bushnell, the last tree of the dog leg. I can get a pole of a water hazard. If there's a pole in the middle of the fairway telling me where to go, I can flag that in with this. So I do love GPS, but there's more uses for this for me that I want. There's a couple of things in this golf bag which I hope you are going to learn today, which I had to learn the hard way. So hopefully you don't learn the hard way like I did. The first one is a spare Bushnell battery is in a compartment in my golf bag at all times, because in competition, one of my very first comps using my Bushnell, I hadn't played a comp for about a year, got to the 8th hole and it ran out of battery. So the Bushnell had lasted a year. Fantastic, great. That is a great battery life. However, not very helpful when you're on the 8th, 9th hole around a competition, when you're playing pretty well, when it suddenly runs out. So I learnt the hard way, struggled in because I was guessing numbers using the 150 post. So now I keep a spare one in my bag. Another hard lesson that I learned once again in competition, and I was actually playing in a comp with Rob, and one of my previous drivers I had, the cogs, which changed the setting, had come a little bit loose, and you could hear it at the top of my backswing. And I did not have a key in my golf bag. So I had to put my driver away and use 3-wood for the rest of the round, which playing a long golf course, which you were, was really difficult. So always keep a wrench key for your driver or any adjustable club in your bag. Now you cannot change the settings mid-round, so every hole I can't tweak my driver to suddenly hit a fade or a draw, but I can tighten it and I'm allowed to tighten it. So I'm going to make the most of it. I've got your standard little club cleaner, Peterfield logo on. I also have loads of ball markers in my bag, and I also have loads of pitch mark repairers in my bag, all in a nice little pouch so I can access them immediately. This one we got given to at Glen Eagles when we played, a lovely friendly reminder to repair your pitch marks. Last thing of my equipment is my glove. Now, I enjoy the FootJoy glove that I currently have, don't get me wrong, but I'm not held to FootJoy at all. I tend to use FootJoy gloves a lot just because their resilience tends to feel a little bit better than other brands. But being a lefty, so I have a right-handed glove, my choice is sometimes limited. I'm lucky at Peterfield, our golf shop, that we get a good choice of left-hand gloves, or for a left-hand golfer, a right-hand glove. That gets annoying. But I always go for a Cabretta leather glove and not synthetic. So the feel is much better. So at the minute, I've got a few spare of these. When I tend to change them is when I feel the grip just wearing. So you can start to see there's a lot of dark patches now on here. Certainly not got crimpled, but the dark patches and me feeling them on those rough areas starting to suggest that I need to use a new glove. So that's probably the last round that one has played. To top it off, I've got a microfiber towel with the Golf Lab logo on. You can see it's a little bit dirty. I use it all the time to not just clean my clubs during the round, give them a little wipe, but clean them when I get home as well. And I won that when we went to the Golf Lab certification, and I won it through answering a question on how TrackMan's radar and the graph it processes, and I had to explain it in front of the class, and I got it right. So I won it. Ding dang do. If you've got any questions on some of the decisions I made, or you're thinking about changing equipment and something I've said has perked your interest, just drop me a little message below on this video, or ping me an Instagram direct message or Facebook direct message at LClarkPCoach. If not, look forward to seeing you all very soon. I'm sick and tired of being stuck indoors. Hope you've all been playing loads of golf, and we'll be back coaching and fitting shortly.